Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Hamley. Frankly, the numbers are astounding. According to exit polling, 69% of white women, 40% of Latina women, 55% of women of all other races, and 8% of black women voted for Donald Trump. This despite his misogyny, being found liable for sexual abuse, and felony convictions for interfering with the 2016 election by giving hush money to a porn star. So why, twice now, have women turned against the woman running for president? What is it about a female leader that turns women off? Some thoughts with our Another View Roundtable after this news from NPR and WHRO News.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Hamley. Just want to give a shout out to all of my listeners in the Williamsburg area. Had such a marvelous time last Saturday at the Let Freedom Ring Foundation Gala. 700 strong. We were there listening to Dr. Martin Luther King III speak about his father's experience with First Baptist Church, Williamsburg, and the touching memorial to the descendants. We celebrated the descendants of those that were whose graves had been uncovered under a parking lot in Colonial Williamsburg. It was very, very powerful. So thank you all so much for coming out. We appreciate that. So once again, it seems that women were the key to Donald Trump's election, despite his disdain for the female species. And the day after the election, black people across the country got a text telling them to report to a plantation and go back to slavery. So much to unpack today with the Another View Roundtable. Dr. Alvian Lyons specializes in human behavior and is a consultant to corporations and other organizations. She's also an author and a podcaster and a dear friend. Hello there.
I'm so excited to have this conversation with you all.
I'm sure you are. Absolutely. Dawn Hester is a career politician and educator and serves as treasurer for the city of Norfolk. Hey, Dawn.
Hey,
how you
hello,
doing?
everyone.
And if you want to get something done, anything done in this community or beyond, then Gayleen Knoyton is your go-to person. She's a professional connector, serves as president of the Hampton NAACP, and is first vice chair of organization for the Democratic Party of Virginia. Hi there, Gayleen.
Jesus is still on the throne.
Hallelujah.
Right.
Thank God.
So before we get into the meat of, this whole discussion about women and this election, I want to know from each of you, I want you to go back to last week.
Okay.
And I want to know, at what point during the election did you begin to think things are going to be a little different than we thought they were going to be, that President Trump would actually become President Trump again?
Pretty early on, actually. I kept waiting to see, as we started to move into some of the cities, the more populated cities, would we see a change, in what the numbers look like? From the beginning, there was such a huge disparity in electorates, and you keep telling yourself, oh, that's just because of where they are recording the data, right? But there comes a point where you start to say to yourself, that is not just because of where they're recording the data. Something is not as you would have expected. So I don't want to go too far into it because I'm going to drift into our topics very quickly. So I would say pretty early on, because I felt the pit in my stomach.
That's what I wanted to know. Also, how you would feel it.
Pretty quickly, I was like, uh-oh, and that, again, I'm going to pause because I can drift so quickly into it.
No problem. We'll come back to that. Gayleen, when did you?
I was diehard all the way to the end, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But the last 4 days, he had some strong commercials.
Mm-hmm.
And he came out with that one line, Kamala broke it,
I'll fix it.
and Trump will fix it.
Yeah.
That one line. And I said to myself, And then we were at the election watch night party. Thank God Congressman Scott was there, because when he came out, it was like we won the presidency, Then we all went home and I went to sleep. And when I woke up the next morning, that's when I found out, what had happened then. But it was those last 4 days, and I was in 4 different voter protection boiler rooms that day, so I got a chance to see what was happening within the state, locally, and across the country, and it was not a whole lot of ruckus like we expected it to be, other than the bomb threats that was in Georgia or whatever, But in Virginia, we really didn't have anything major like we've seen in the past. And I said to myself, so yeah.
Okay. Dawn.
I went to bed at 10 with an upset stomach and knew then.
It's funny because I went to bed too. It was just like the stress of it.
I didn't want to hear it anymore.
Was a lot. So just the stress of the whole thing together.
I
was
stayed
just
up
enough.
until 2,
Did you?
3 a.m. and I was still just waiting just to see, is it possible? Is it possible? And Matt was like, go to sleep. Go to sleep. You're not going to find out till the morning. Go to sleep. I'm like, but the problem is I think I already know.
I knew at 10.
Yep.
Yeah. So Alvian, what is it about? Because it's funny because when we first started talking about the election back in the summer, and and we have Eric come on, we've had you guys come on, and I've said all along that I was concerned that what was being said publicly was going to change once people got in the voting booth. What happened?
Well, I think I think that we are a little bit in denial about who America really is. And I don't want to say that, and I don't want to suggest that in a pessimistic perspective, right? But to say that when people are like, America, you're better than this. No, it's really not. And I say that to say that if we were better than that, we would have done something different than that. The whole point of a democratic process is that it reveals our values. And so the shock for most people who were disappointed in the outcome is because you're still holding this ideal of who America is that is not congruent with who America actually is. So it's as we start to psychologically wrap our minds around the fact that in many ways we project out on to others our value systems, be that good, bad, or indifferent. We project those things onto others. And so when we see that reflected, whatever that reflection is, it's affirming of who we are. And when it's not reflected back to us, we presume something is wrong. But the reality is we were projecting our orientation out into the world and expecting that we would get replications of that mirrored back to us.
Because we think that whatever ours is what
that's
everybody
what
else is.
most people think, right? Or at least the majority. We like to tell ourselves that we are representative of a larger portion, a larger demographic of the whole. And what we're discovering, those of us who did not get the outcome we were expecting, is that we are not representative numerically of assuming everything was legitimate from an electoral perspective, okay? With that being the baseline assumption, the numbers clearly indicate that our perceptions were the minority perception. And I think that that's the thing that's shocking for people, to know that the people you think, your neighbors, your next door, your best friends next door, the colleague that is in the office or cubicle next to you, the person with the shovel next to you, that they think like you think. And that is not necessarily the case at all. And there are a lot of people who were embarrassed about the decision they were going to make. So they did not tell the truth. And the polling, not even the exit polling, actually matched what the data was.
Dawn, what do you think? What happened? I mean, was it just because of sexism? Was racism involved also? Was it just because, as Alvian said, we think one way and the rest of the country thinks another?
Oh, yeah, I can say that. It's all of the above, I believe. I do think it's sexism. I do think it's racism. We learn more about women, what their fears are, why they would pick a person who has denigrated them as long as we've known about him to be the leader again after what we've already seen. I cannot explain. But it is cultural. It is fear. You know, you talk with some women who have worked under women, and they have challenges with how women lead. And, you know, until you have a better experience, your traditional thinking is, I don't know if I'm ready to go that way. But then I just don't understand. Well, I do understand because I'm a black woman. So I have lived it. I just didn't think it would be, the numbers would be as bad as they were. So the white men in all age, I know we're talking about women, but white men in all age ranges were for Trump.
And demographics.
Demographics, right. So it was, it's a life that we are now living in, and we have to embrace it, understand it, talk to others, to learn more, to try to bring us all to the center so the country can be better first, and hope we don't get blown up in the next 2 years.
So, Gayleen, when you came in to the studio, you were saying Virginia got the memo.
Yeah, Virginia understood the assignment for the most part, because she's up 5.5% right now. Probably when it's all gets done, she'll probably be up 6% or more in Virginia. Still was not a huge margin. I mean, we're looking at 200-something thousand difference. And he did increase in Virginia. However, she still won Virginia. But the bigger picture is that on a local level, we have major wins, you know, just on local seats. You have probably in Hampton Roads, and you got Chesapeake, you got 3 black people that were elected to be on city council. Suffolk is going to be the same way. Look like they have a mayor's race, and Clint Jenkins, I think, is within 100 and something votes of the current mayor. But then also the bigger picture is that Chesapeake, Virginia Beach, Henrico, Chesterfield, always Republican areas, you know, for the most part. Virginia Beach has been changing a little bit. They all went for Kamala. For Kamala. They all went for her.
I was getting ready to say, why are you saying her name?
Yeah, I know I said it wrong, and I know better. But anyway, they all went for her, and so that's the difference. But the Democratic turnout was lower. People stayed at home.
Yes, they did.
Okay. Some people stayed at home. If you look at the numbers, go to vpap.org. You'll see all of it there. Some people stayed home. But I know one thing. I will not be marching on January 18th. And because some of the women and the white women who duped us in 2016, and some of them still showed up to march, and we thought they voted with us, I found out later, I know a group of them voted for Trump again.
Well, you know, it's interesting because in doing the research for today's show, one of the things that struck me was basically what we try to do with Another View every week, meaning that we don't understand each other's lives and lived experiences. Because they were talking about the ad that came out when Julia Roberts did, you know, the you can go in the voting booth and nobody has to know who you voted for, and how conservative women took that as being talked down to or gaslit. And that they were offended by the fact that someone would think that they didn't have their own minds to make up. Now, I can't explain why, based on what the president-elect has said about women, why they can ignore that to move forward with him, and vote him in anyway. But this whole idea of us not knowing each other, how much does that play into how we missed?
Well, let me just say this. Now, you have to realize Virginia does not identify by party on
Right.
general elections. You have other states that do.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these women were afraid to come out. They either stayed at home or they went on ahead and vote Republican, or whatever. So because you can pull their record up. I mean, parties can pull them up, and elected officials can pull it up and see how they voted.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to look at how many states have that vote by party, for general elections. I think that has an impact on it as well. But what I was saying earlier in 2016, when they voted for Trump and then they got mad because after he said it was things that he was going to do and they came out and marched, I don't want to see them out there marching now. I don't want to see them marching because it's the same thing that happened. Now, I don't know if that vote by party has something to do with it, but when you talk about that they have their own minds, apparently something's going on.
I don't think that the something is as much the way that the system
True.
is operating. I think that it is totally our unknowingness of the human dynamic. I saw a TikTok that I thought was very interesting, and what the woman said, and was a white woman. She said, "I will completely acknowledge the fact that everyone who voted for Trump is not a racist, a misogynist, a homophobe, or a person without character. But I will say that everyone who voted for Trump, none of those things were a deal breaker for them."
But I think that's what it comes in. I think that's where the confusion comes in terms of why wasn't that a deal breaker for them?
I think because there are so many negotiations we are making with our lives right now that it doesn't seem too far a stretch for many people. And that is to say that we parse out lots of things every single day. Every day, and we're getting more and more used to parsing it out. And when you come down the generations, so to speak, so now you're coming into your heavy social media generation, your heavy reality television generation, your heavy, as you move into those generations, you're talking about more and more people who have more and more access to people's lives, and those lives are never what you're seeing typically on the surface. There's always something else that's going on. There are always layers to it. And so I can still follow you and know that you are part of, this group of individuals. I still follow you and I friend you, even though I know that you don't like this, that is different than my world. So you get used to parsing out elements of personhood. And in the parsing out of these elements of personhood in our generations, we're getting more and more comfortable with the mess. We're getting more and more comfortable with picking and choosing how we're going to connect with you through one layer of who you are, not all of the layers of who you are. Because I like you as an athlete, I could ignore that you're this. Because I like you as an artist, I could ignore that you're that. It's no different than people who are like, I'm going to keep playing R. Kelly's music, even though. People who are like, I'm going to love Michael Jackson no matter what. People who are like, you could go down the list, and I'm using black references only to say that it is not just white people who choose to parse out what they like and what they don't like based on who they are in support of. And we're doing more and more of that, and it's getting worse and worse as you come down. The younger the generations, I know so many young people who voted for Trump that are people of color. So many under 40s that voted for Trump. And it was they didn't tell me ahead of time. They told me after the fact.
Did they say why?
So here's what's really interesting, and people don't expect this to be part of the conversation, but particularly for black men, they're like, I don't believe that she is for black men. You know how I know she's not? She's married to a white man. So don't try to tell me that she loves black men when the thing that's closest to her, what's in her bed, is a white man. So there were so many raw conversations that came out later that were not discussed prior to. and people that I honestly thought would have been in support of Kamala. But after the die was cast, let me tell you what was really, because I spent so much time with audiences and clients and the like, but let me tell you what always bothered me. And they never believed her. I hear so often that I don't believe her. I think that I'm not sure who she even is, not the policy. They weren't debating whether or not she had good policy. They were saying as a person, I cannot feel her at all. And I don't believe her that she is for me.
Wow.
And Trump even said that. He was like, I didn't know what she was. So before that line, when he said that one line, I was like, uh-oh.
Yep.
That's what I said. Uh-oh.
You know, we got a couple of emails from folks from our listening audience, and I just want to read one. So this is from a gentleman out of Virginia Beach, and he said Harris lost because if a typical non-urban American was 50-50 on election day, they were going to lean away from a female person of color, consciously or subconsciously. Mm-hmm. What do you think? Yes. That's back to what you said.
Exactly.
She's like, yeah.
Yeah, you know, I don't know what to add. I don't know what to add to it, and why people do the things that they do, which goes back to the conversation of we have to get to know each other again.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So there's another email from a listener who said, why the election was lost to Trump, in my opinion, is plain sexism and racism. I don't believe it's Harris's fault, Biden's fault, the campaign's fault, or the Democratic Party's fault. It's the fault of hate, fear, white, and male supremacy. But I don't totally despair because Trump has shined a light on all of these things which have been lurking in the shadows. No more. Now is our chance to take this opportunity to address these issues and try to develop some plans and ideas to form nonpartisan coalitions to begin the work.
And I agree with that. I do agree with that because a big part of our thought process has to be how do we build coalitions for things that are going to be beneficial for our families going forward. And the other part is educating, because that to me, that's been a big part of my elected life, is teaching people how the system that we talk about or that we're living in, how it works. Mm-hmm. And we have to continue to do that to help people understand, because when people kept talking about the economy, I'm like, the economy has been the best that it's been, even though it's not the best that it's been for everyone.
Right, because I was going to say that was a huge issue, but you wanted to add something, Kayleen?
I do. Well, someone said that they'd rather put a felon back in the White House than in order to have cheap eggs. So I was like, okay. But let me just say this. Civics needs to go back in the classroom. We don't have enough civics. And I also want to say that I never thought I would say that we have to we are at state rights right now. We got to protect what we have. We have in Virginia. I know, because states' rights was about slavery before, right?
Correct.
But right now, for the next 4 years, we have to protect what we have. We're the only progressive state in the South that have a women's right to choose, extended voting rights, gun safety laws, and the list goes on. Right. And we have to protect. This General Assembly session coming up is going to be very important. We need to pay attention. We need to champion legislation that's going to protect us here in Virginia, and champion legislators that's going to do that as well.
757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call. I really would love to hear from white and Latina women who decided to vote for Trump, because I'm really trying to understand what it is and where the disconnect is in terms of women and leadership. So give us a call if you will, please. We are going to have polite conversations, but we really would love to hear from you. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. But Mayor Philip Jones from Newport News joins us right now, who just called in. Hey, Mayor Jones, how are
Jones.
you?
Hey, everyone. I was driving to City Hall, and I just wanted to say thank you so much, Barbara, for having this conversation. And I heard Gayleen on, and so the question that I had, it goes back to Dr. King's fourth book, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? Gayleen, ma'am, I know we have elections every single year in Virginia. what is next? What is on the line for Virginia next year?
The bottom line to it is that, again, it's about states' rights, and we have to make sure that we champion legislators. Right now, we have to, speaking on my partisan side, maintain the House and get more seats in the House and make sure we take the executive offices. But we have to educate people on a hyper-local level on what it means. Educate people on policy. And when I say policy, I mean, when someone told me I don't do politics, well, politics going to do you. So we've been going around to conversations and cocktails and talking to some of these Gen Zers and millennials and telling them, do you buy eggs? Do you buy gas? Do you pay rent? And we break it down on how policy affects all of that. And we have to go back to square one. Seriously.
So I want to say something, and actually Mayor Jones and I had this conversation quite some time ago, and that is to say that more often than not, and where politicians often go wrong, that Trump has mastered is the knowingness that elections are won from the shoulders down, not from the shoulders up. When we keep talking about how we are going to more effectively saturate the American conscious with information, we are missing what he has figured out, that it has nothing to do with information. It is about being able to connect with your voter. That's right. It is how they feel about you that determines whether or not they pull that lever. What changes when you go into the communities to educate is not the information. The reason most people end up voting for you is because you took the time to be present. The connection changed the way that I felt. The information was secondary to the connection. And that's why they say in education, kids don't care what you know until they know that you care. That you care.
And you got to be able to connect to see what's important to them. I always say, I'm not talking at you. I'm talking with you.
Yes.
You know, and then when I finish talking to them, and they'll come back and they'll say, Miss Gayleen, like I'm an old lady, or Aunt Gayleen, I never thought about it that way. You know,
our phone lines are lit up. Thank you, Mayor Jones, for calling. But if you're just joining us, we're talking about the apparent mistrust of women leaders by women and others with our Another View Roundtable, human behavior consultant Dr. Alvian Lyons, Norfolk City Treasurer Dawn Hester, and political operative Gayleen Knoyton. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Liz joins us from Portsmouth. Hi, Liz. You're on the air.
Hi there, Barbara. Nice to talk with you finally. I've been wanting to call into the show for quite some time.
Oh, thank you.
Great. I feel like something that one of your guests said about 10 minutes ago was a little bit misleading. She stated that in some states, unlike Virginia, people are registered Democrats or they're registered Republicans and such. That only comes into play during primary season. During general elections, they're getting the same ballot as everyone. They can vote for somebody that's not the party that they're registered for. And the guests that spoke seemed to imply that that wasn't the case. That is the case during primary season. And even in Virginia, even though I'm not a registered Democrat or a registered Republican, I can only take one of the party's ballots during primary season. But all of us have the opportunity to vote for whomever we want at the general election time. So
that's not correct. That's not correct. I'm sorry, but that's not correct. In Virginia, it's by primary, in some other states. But you have states that vote by party for general elections, but not in Virginia. That's true.
Not.
Yeah, I know. I wasn't referring to Virginia. I was referring to other states.
Okay, so you're telling me that in, let's say, Wyoming, they're getting a general election ballot in Wyoming when they walk up to the poll.
But they're registered. They have to register to vote either Democrat or primary. And when they register to vote, you vote by, you're registered, you're identified by the party. That's not in every state. Please look it up.
True.
Please look it up. Please look it up.
Well, hold on.
Okay.
Hold on.
Okay. I tell you what, the phone lines, Liz, the phone lines are lit up. So what I'd rather do is we'll go through and do some research and come back with a definitive answer on that. I was trying actually to remember, since I grew up and voted in Maryland, and we did have to register by party to vote. But we will get an answer and circle back with you. Thanks so much for the call. I appreciate that. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Elena joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Elena. You're on the air.
Thank you very much. Excellent program. Thank you for the courage to do this. What I present to the panel is, please address the effect of lying on the outcome of the election for two reasons. I do agree that it was racism and misogyny for the most part. And as a person born in Latin America with black skin, the effects, what happens there is the same as what happens here. It is generally hidden. It is generally undercover. But the effect on my life and on the lives of other black people is the same. It is destructive.
Okay, Elena, thank you so much for the call. Alvin, you want to address that?
So the thing about lying really is not just about the information that is said. It is about the way that it lands, right? It's part of the reason why, and I'm going to take it to something very simple, but just one of the realities that come with it. It's part of the reason why you can say to someone, just from women to women, because we're talking about the woman vote, how do I look in this dress? And when the other person says to you, you look fabulous, you know you look terrible. That's why you asked them how you looked in the dress. You know it doesn't fit you properly. That's why you asked. But because the other person gave you the information you wanted to hear, you discarded what you knew to be true on the inside. We do that same thing in lots of different ways. Because I want to hear that you're going to fix whatever my concern is. I want to hear that you're going to fix whatever my fear is. I want to hear that you're going to address whatever my hurt is. I want to hear that I'm going to be protected in the way that I feel vulnerable. I want to hear that. And even though you're lying, I want that answer from someone. And I will take the lie for comfort over the truth that does not provide the same comfort. We do it in lots of different ways. We just don't recognize the psychological and social parallels of those things as humans.
Do you think, Dawn, that there will ever be a female president?
In the United States.
In the United States, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yes,
in the United States.
Yes, I do.
You do?
I do. I might not see it, but I do. I think it's necessary. But yes, I do think that we will at some point. But we realize how much we would have to do in order to prepare someone for that, which means being in position, getting in various positions, and building a base. It's easier for men, we know that. But yes, I do. I'm 69. I might not see it, but I'm going to be working for it till I'm gone.
What about you, Gayleen? Do you think so?
Yes. I'm with Dawn. I don't know when we're going to see it. I mean, it's like women still are put on the back burners. I mean, it seems like every time we get an inch, we get a step back, but the fight is still there, and we have to continue on. I mean, I thought I was going to be able to retire for a minute, but it's like I'm going to be fighting till I'm 150 years old. I think I'm going to have to be till I'm 150 years old, but I'm just saying that the fight is still on, but I think eventually we will see it.
Okay, we got about 20 minutes left, and I want to talk about something that happened the day after the election, which was a text that went to many African-American young children, like middle school, high school, as well as college kids, as well as professionals. And it said, and it was a very personal text because in most of them, there was either the person's name or the location where they were. And it said, "Greetings," I won't mention this name, You have been selected to pick cotton at the nearest plantation starting 11/7/2024. Please be ready at 8 a.m. sharp with your belongings. Our executive slave catchers pick you up in a brown van. Be prepared to be searched once you've entered the plantation. You are in Plantation Group 7. Now, that came out the day after it was announced that who the president-elect was. I was listening to a news story, and I heard one guy who got the text say it landed differently because of the timing. Thoughts on what happened?
It landed differently because of the time.
Because it was right after the election. Yes.
Okay. Well, this election, from when it started, has revealed so much to us if we paid attention. So it's revelation of what we're living with, and how we're going to have to move forward. I was not shocked. What I'm shocked about is they haven't found out who did it. It's been long enough for them to be able to say who did it. Mm-hmm. Because we know that with all this IT, AI, and everything else that everybody knows and all of this, that we should know who did this, and somebody should be arrested. Mm-hmm. And that's the issue that I have with it. The feeling, the statement. Many people think that all the time. It goes back to the deportation. This went to black people, but it's still people of color, mm-hmm. still trying to intimidate us, where, in my mind, I'm going, so you coming after me? I ain't going nowhere. Mm-hmm. And my back is still strong and my brain is right. So what's next? And that's, to me, what we need to be helping our children understand, because, Gayleen mentioned we got to teach civics and put it back in school. We don't know we're going to have public schools anymore. So, so we've got a whole lot of different ways that we need to be thinking about how we are going to move forward, how we are going to educate our children. We already know our systems, public school systems, are not providing what our families and children need to the best of their ability. They're mm-hmm. doing the best they can in the circumstances that they're in. But we've got a whole lot of teaching, and not just teaching the children. We got to teach the mamas and the daddies.
Well, I was going to say, it sounds like we've got a lot of going back into becoming more insular in terms of taking care of our own, teaching our own children, in addition to whatever they learn in public school.
Correct.
But we can teach our own, but we need to know ourselves.
There you go.
Seriously.
Well,
seriously, we need to know
that's a good point.
I had a conversation with a mother this morning, and she's telling me that she took her Gen Zer out to dinner with some friends, and none of them voted at all, right?
Yep.
And they didn't vote at all because they didn't feel like this election applied to them. Mm-hmm. They didn't feel like, and I always say that if you don't do politics is going to do you. And then that's how you have to make it personal and find out what's important to them.
Our phone lines are lit up, so let's go to some calls.
Mm-hmm.
Hoyt joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Hoyt. You're on the air.
Thank you for. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm a Latino. I was born in Jersey City, raised in Puerto Rico. My parents was Puerto Rican. I was raised in Catholic, and then I went to different, Protestant, all that religion. Mm-hmm. And Latin women over here in Virginia a lot. Okay, Kamala Harris lost because she wants to keep the right of woman to kill babies. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of the Latin women, mm-hmm. Christian women, right? Mm. They don't want to say, I vote for Kamala Harris. When they die, go in front of God. Say, why did you vote to kill babies?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Wait, we got your point. Let me let the panel discuss. I don't mean to cut you off, but I really want to try to get in as many calls as we can. But Alvian, respond.
I'm not surprised by that at all.
Right.
Not even a little bit. When you are a devout Catholic, mm-hmm. your decisions, and I mean like seriously devout, and I don't mean American devout, because if you haven't been, obviously you all know I'm an immigrant child, so if you haven't been to the countries where religion is like part of the reason, unfortunately, some of the priests were able to do the things they were able to do is because they were practically deity inside of the countries. So the respect for the priest was so high. The respect for the religion is so high. The accountability is to God. So you don't speak ill of your church, your priest, your church community. So, and if you are taught that life is sacred, nothing else will matter relative to that vote, because it is cultural to the core. It is not intellectual. It is completely cultural, and that is the thing that's on the inside, and it's just different. And
I'm a Catholic, you know, and we have a progressive Catholic organization, right? When the Pope came out and said he was not endorsing anybody, or they were staying out of it or whatever, I knew something was up first then. And we understand that, you know, that women's right to, the abortion issue or whatever, but there are a large group of us that believe in women's right to choose. I've been a Catholic all my life.
Likewise,
you know,
but it doesn't change. But I'm an immigrant Catholic,
right.
And as immigrants, my dad, when the Catholic Church it was scandalous in the newspapers what was going on, he would still not stop going to church regardless of what was transpiring. And I said, "You're a father. How can you be okay with this to parse out? I will not leave my religion for what is going on throughout my religion." Because in his mind, that is not just because it's pervasive and we're watching the scandal, has nothing to do with what I'm going to do in my personal life. He parsed that out so clearly. And quite frankly, it's when I left the Catholic Church from a traditional perspective and just started going non-denominational. And when I'm home with my parents, I still go to Catholic Church with them out of respect. But I could not parse that out. My dad had no problem.
Different people parse
My dad had
differently.
no problem parsing out what was happening from the religion that he grew up
But were
in.
you all surprised that the abortion issue was not as apparently prominent among women as we thought it was?
Well, I think it depends on, one, you're talking about electing the president. But then we had how many states where the abortion legislation passed?
Yes, exactly.
There were seven.
Even though
States, I think, where it passed.
Exactly.
So it goes back to the states' rights piece of how strong it's going to have to be going forward. But the other thing I wanted to say is this is the most diverse call-in line that we have had since I've been on this show.
That's very
I'm
true.
happy about it.
Which is wonderful. Absolutely. Martin joins us from Yorktown. Hi, Martin. You're on the air. Hello, Martin.
Yes, I was just calling to make a point about the Christian demographic in America. I think that's a point that just got recently brought up in the conversation. The abortion rate in America correlates to probably who got voted for, and that has to do with religion and the Christian demographic. I don't know the numbers on it, but Christianity is the largest religion in America, and I'm sure a lot of people lean upon their values and who they voted for by leaning on their religion. And so I think in looking at the abortion rates, you could also correlate to see who voted for who. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you for the call. We appreciate that. You know, one of the other issues too, among the that I found fascinating was amongst the Latinx community, their feelings about deportation and the immigration issue, and why, you know, you would. Well, you know, conventional wisdom, I guess, would say you would think that they would be maybe not so happy with Trump's rhetoric about how he's going to, you know, get everyone out of the country. But they're saying that, you know what, we came here legally, meaning the folks that were able to vote, and we want them to come here legally. Also, we don't want a whole bunch of illegal people.
I don't know that there are too many people that disagree with that.
Right.
It's the how that has been the issue, because the system hasn't been corrected, improved to be able to receive the number of people who are coming. And to keep in mind that it's not just people coming from the Latin Latinx or the Latin Hispanic
Latino
community
Mm-hmm.
only.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming from other countries to get here to try to find a better way of life. So we do have to fix it. I don't know that it's going to be fixed anytime soon, but we do have to have a process for people to come. But we want people to come.
Right.
I think it's also important to note a couple of things. One, that there is really no Latino vote. People don't seem to understand that
Yes, there's
Mexicans,
Mexican
El
and-
Salvadorians, Puerto
Exactly.
Ricans,
Right.
Exactly.
you know, like they're
Cubans.
Dominicans,
Everybody
like
Everybody has a
Cubans.
different
They
perspective.
are all,
They're all different.
and they hate
Yeah.
each other sometimes.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
like so we put them all in one box.
Dark-skinned black people.
Yeah.
And because island people of color versus African people of color versus Haitian people of color, we have totally different perspectives about America. So there is no black vote solely. There is no Latino vote solely. Cubans identify as white, but we count them in America for our lack of awareness, knowledge, and perspective as Hispanics, as if it is a monolith, and it is not a monolith. And while we keep thinking our way to a vote, we will keep losing the vote because so much of it is feeling our way, and that feeling is through the connection. For instance, I've heard many Latinos, because I always thought it was appropriate as we are getting more progressive to acknowledge Latinx.
Right.
Multiple of my Latino friends said, when you say X, we know you know nothing about our community because we don't ever use that kind of language. So every time we think we're being more inclusive, we
We're
are
actually
showing
doing
our
good.
lack of knowledge
How they
of
wanna
the
be addressed.
intimacy
Right.
of community. And so, and what Trump is doing effectively is he is saying the things that are intimately happening at dinner tables that are homogenous. So we are thinking from a diversity lens where our table includes multiple people at the table. But what he's speaking to is the homogeneity of a table and what those people say when nobody else is listening. That's what he's saying out loud. So we don't recognize that there's a lot of underbelly in the conversations we have. If we're honest, what we say at the cookout and who we let come to the cookout is totally based on community. You ain't getting to the cookout if we don't trust you, because we know what we're going to say at the cookout. Nobody wants that recorded.
That's true.
So there are certain conversations that happen in certain places that are not happening anyplace else. And he is saying the things that are happening at the cookouts we're not invited to. He's telling you what conversation happened at the picnic. Okay? And at the picnic, they all were feeling this way, and they voted in accordance to the picnic conversation, not the cookout.
Who goes to the picnic?
I go to
And
cookouts.
that's,
You see?
that's
You
the,
see,
that
that's who's
becomes
gonna be
the
invited.
question.
I don't see him.
I go to cookouts.
I don't see him going to a picnic or cookout or anything.
And I say that
who is-
metaphorically.
I know you do,
right?
But then who is bringing him this to help him to know that this is what you're supposed to say?
Well, at
'Cause
least
he isn't.
8% of black women apparently went to the picnic because they are hearing his conversation because they voted for him.
They're feeling his
They're
conversation.
You're right. They're
Well,
not hearing it. They're feeling it.
They're
that
feeling
they're not
his conversation.
that they're not included.
So no, the
No.
8% that voted for him see themselves as included. The 8% that voted for him are Candace Owens of America.
Yep.
Okay.
So
All right.
they
Thank you.
100% see themselves as different
Not us.
and not this.
Oh,
Right? I am not them.
Okay.
Like Kendrick
They're not
Lamar,
bl-
they're not like us.
they're not black.
like us.
They're not black like us.
They're not
Yeah.
black like us.
Okay, so
Okay.
we got like 5 minutes left.
Can I have one quick disclaimer?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
I was on
You
a
weren't-
scholars conversation, and this conversation about voting by party came up.
Yes.
And I'm talking with some very smart people, and apparently they were wrong. Okay, so go to USA.gov, which I'm going
you.
from now on.
Thank you.
And you're right. In the primaries, you identify by party in the state, but in general elections, you vote. So she was correct. I was wrong. I listened to the wrong scholars.
Thank you, Jaylene.
And the wrong program. That won't happen again.
But
and
see,
I apologize.
You know what? And I really appreciate that for bringing it up. And I thank the caller for calling in, because you know what? Because we can't know all of it. I mean, we try to be as knowledgeable as we can, but okay. But seriously, guys, in the last 4 minutes, how do we start to pull it back together? Because ultimately, we've got to learn more about each other if we're going to be able to figure out how to, as you say, Alvian, make each other feel each other. So what do we need to do? I'll start with Dawn.
Well, you just have to talk to people who don't go where you do. And so you just really have to be open to listening and receiving. And then I think that we will find that there's more in that middle that I keep talking about, in that center, where there can be agreement that will impact the lives of others. I started a conversation last night with a Republican delegate that I had never talked to before. And it was the best conversation, understanding.
You find out.
Conservative as he is. But we found a middle ground on a couple things.
Got to talk to people. That don't look like you.
That's right.
And don't think like you.
Correct.
Exactly.
And you can't use the boogeyman or boogie woman aspect. This is going to happen and we're all going to die, or whatever the case might be. You know, we're resilient people. We have lived through slavery, the civil rights. We have lived, and we're going to live through this.
Jim Crow.
For 4 years. Jim Crow, all of that. And we're going to live through this. And this generation is going to have to learn how to live to it just like we did. Right? So it's more about, as Dawn said, talking to different people, but talking to our own people and talking to our young folks and understand what's important to them, and then being able to identify with it and show them. And I talked to a delegate this morning, and I told him, during the General Assembly session, find people in each category, Gen Zers, millennials, the trusted voices, get a bus and bring them to the General Assembly. Let them see how it works. Mayor Jones called in. He said, what's next? The great things that he's doing in the city, not everybody knows it in the city. It's a demographic of folks. I know Councilman John Ely does a lot of Newport News to educate his base, but we have got to educate hyper local and bring it home to why it's important to vote and why they are important.
Okay. Last minute goes to you, Ms. Alvian.
Okay. ABCD. 1, know that everybody's in it for the advancement of themselves and their agenda. Understand the person's agenda, because you are going to have to be speaking to that. It is present in the room, whether or not I'm saying it out loud or not. B, belonging. Do not forget the power of belonging. Tribalism is very real in America. If you don't understand where these individuals feel like they belong or their isolation, you will miss what is motivating their vote. C, communication. Know your audience. You cannot speak to everybody the same way. You need to be able to communicate in the language of the listener. And D, do not assume anybody's vote. You don't know what anybody is doing. So if we are not looking for ways to speak to what they need, be able to make sure they feel like they belong, communicate so we understand and the listener understands us, and stop assuming anybody's vote, we will not find the win. But if we do our ABCD, we can absolutely change the trajectory of the next election.
Thank you, Roundtable. I always appreciate you all. And thank you, audience, for sharing an hour of your life with us today on Another View. You can listen to this show or any of our programs at whro.org/anotherview on Spotify or wherever you go for your podcast listening pleasure. Our theme music is an original composition created especially for Another View by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Jordan Christie is our audio engineer. And Connor Worley answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Take some time this weekend and just breathe. We'll get together again next Thursday at noon for Another View.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever, whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.